Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Talk. And it's not just any old Plank of the Week. This is the, believe it or not, 5th anniversary edition of Plank of the Week. So I think we should all give ourselves a bit of a round of applause. Well done. The longest-running show on talkTV. Russell Quirk is here, of course. Peter Bleksley's here. Rebecca Twomey is here. Will Geddes is here. What a great crowd to have for the 5th anniversary edition. We've got a cake, we've got wine, and we've got Russell Quirk, who actually attended the very first ever Plank of the Week.
I had the honour.
Do you remember who won it?
Sadiq Khan?
Yeah, Sadiq Khan's probably a safe bet.
Or Harry
Sadiq Khan
and
may have been in there. We'll have to we'll see if we can get Chuck to find out while we're doing the show. But why don't we kick things straight away with Keir Starmer, because he's definitely a plank this week again.
Well, he is, and obviously Plank of the Year as well from last year. Keir Starmer, the reason I'm nominating him, actually probably not just as Plank of the Week, but Tyrant of the Week. On the basis that, of course, he eventually made a speech in response to these calls for an inquiry into the child rape gangs, which is what they are, by the way, not just grooming gangs. And of course, he not only, in the wake of what Jess Phillips, his minister, had said with regard to stopping that, preventing that, there being an obstacle to that for whatever reason, he came out and said that, in effect, if you criticise the government's decision on preventing an inquiry, a proper government inquiry into decades of child rape by largely Pakistani grooming gangs, rape gangs, that you were, in effect, far right.
Yes, he loves a far-right slur.
Well, it's very reminiscent, Mike, isn't it, of the summer? So, of course, in the summer, he said exactly the same thing about protesters on the streets of Britain, that generally were just protesters, being patriotic, worried that Britain's going to hell in a handcart. But, of course, he labelled everybody that was on the streets back then as a far-right thug and a far-right rioter. So it's a very, very easy, very lazy thing, I think,
it really
for
is.
him to be able to say. But I actually think, as the Prime Minister of Britain, it is an absolute disgrace.
Yes, and so it proves, because everybody who quite rightly thinks that there should be an inquiry, including some of the victims, including some of the police officers who were involved, including some of the lawyers, including some politicians and some commentators, were all absolutely outraged. Maggie Oliver, of course, who has been at this particular story since the very beginning, she was absolutely appalled that somebody like Keir Starmer would call her far right. But let's have a look at what he actually said.
When the poison of the far right leads to serious threats to Jess Phillips and others, then in my book, a line has been crossed. What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon simply to get attention, tweeting, talking, but not doing anything about it. Now so desperate for attention that they're amplifying what the far right is saying.
Wasn't a line crossed when we allowed these criminals, these monsters, to potentially get away with what they were
continually for 25 years.
It's horrific. And also, we're not hearing from the people who this actually affected. And I think that's a big thing to do with their socio-economic status of these predominantly white working class girls. We're not actually hearing from them. So perhaps Keir Starmer could have actually said, why don't we hear from these? What would they like to happen?
Let's also just reaffirm the fact that obviously it may well be that one of the reasons that Keir Starmer and his government don't want an inquiry is because who was the Director of Public Prosecutions between 2008 and 2013? The man himself, Keir Starmer, was that individual. Of course, he will say, but in 2012 I did all these wonderful and great things to try and kind of move this up to the surface. Well, for the first 4 or 5 years, you did absolutely nothing. And
he's also admitted himself that when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, they let a lot of these young women down.
But he only then raised his head in 2012 because it came to public prominence. Because he had to, because it was now a thing.
And the irony is, he calls people bandwagon jumpers when, as leader of the opposition, he was the greatest bandwagon jumper known in the history of British politics.
Of course.
Any matter that raised its head, boom, he was on it. We'll do something about it. We'll change this. We'll do that. And with regards to so many issues, Sir Keir Starmer, we're still waiting.
But Peter, to be honest, he even goes beyond that. I mean, now he's in office. I mean, he is the driver of the bandwagon. I mean, everything from climate change to xenophobia through to goodness knows whatever else. I mean, literally anything that is a topical subject, which is an easy win in terms of putting some sort of manifesto behind it, is pretty much what he's done. He's done nothing of any value to this country whatsoever.
No, he really hasn't. And it's while he says he won't tolerate things like, far-right threats to Jess Phillips, he obviously will tolerate the raping of children in this country because he's done nothing about it. But in this actual week, you won't believe this one, right? When you think that the Labour Party couldn't sink any lower than to call genuine victims of these horrible crimes far-right and complain about the fact that they're complaining about them, right? They also then put out a TikTok commercial, unrelated, right? Yes. Using a song from a rapper who's written basically the most disgraceful and horrible words, misogynistic words, about training young boys to go out with girls and to basically beat them
Abuse them,
to sexually assault them, to punch them in their private parts. Let's have a look at that.
Nursing,
it's lovely, isn't it? We've actually edited it in a way so that you can't hear the horrible words, but some of the words that you've seen, Russell, we can't actually repeat because it's too
it's disgraceful. It's misogynistic criminality really is being encouraged in it. I mean, and in the same week as the government are under criticism, rightly so, for trying to sweep this whole child rape thing of decades under the carpet, they actually produce, as a Labour central office, a headquarters, a video that talks about sexual crimes, misogyny and bullying of young girls and women. I mean, seriously, you couldn't make it. It's not like something out the thick of it.
You'd have to be completely and utterly moronic to allow that to go out. On any week, never mind this particular week, right? Yeah. And Alicia Kearns, who's an MP, of course, she put out a tweet. She's a Conservative MP. She put out a tweet saying how unacceptable this particular video was and how ludicrous that it should make its way into the public domain. They don't mind an inquiry, they just don't want this one. Isn't that funny?
Or they don't want them to implicate themselves potentially when they were in previous roles. They don't want them with regard to them being in government. It's funny, isn't it? That about turn.
How unusual is that? But of course, in the last sort of dash of the dice this week, we had Jess Phillips saying, we're not completely ruling it out. So they are kind of slightly starting to shift a little bit because I think they're starting to realise that actually almost the entire country wants them to have some kind of inquiry, so they better bloody well get on with it. Yeah. Anyway, Peter, over to you. You've got a government department to talk about.
But before I start on the Department of Work and Pensions, may I just say it's a great honour to be here on this 5th anniversary. Of course. We do have wine, as has been mentioned. We do
Don't get too used to it.
We may also have vodka.
You bought that on himself.
Well, Peter Bleksley's a man after my own heart. You can't just have one drink when you can have two. Well done.
Please drink responsibly.
Bravo, sir.
Nostrovia, that's all I can say.
The way you drank, you drunk it with purpose.
Are you feeling
pardon?
Yeah, I hope you're going home on the train, is all I can say. Right, the Department of Work and Pensions.
Now, you might think that when somebody sadly passes away, they might no longer receive their old age pension or any pension credits that they were due whilst they were living and breathing. But Rupert Lowe from the Reform Party fired in a series of questions to the Department of Work and Pensions to establish just how much money this clearly inefficient department has paid out to people over the last 5 years who are actually dead.
Deceased?
Yes.
Right.
And believe it or not, the Department of Work and Pensions in the last 5 years has paid out to dead people £550 million.
You're joking.
Where's it gone?
Goodness me. I haven't even seen this story. This is outrageous.
It's absolutely...
Where is it all sitting in bank accounts somewhere?
Yeah, and the most remarkable thing is they are not empowered to claw it back.
Of course not.
They can't. No, they are not legally allowed.
How can they sue a dead person for the money back, I suppose?
So somebody perhaps who's the partner of somebody who's deceased and still has that money going into a joint account, for example, and they know about it, they cannot be compelled to hand the money back.
So hang on, so we have the irony of the government, and I appreciate this goes back to the previous government, but the government paying £500 million out to people that are dead, but not paying £500 million out in winter fuel allowance to people that are still alive just.
Yeah. Correct.
Incredible.
Yeah. Correct, Amundo. Right. Now, what they have done is they've appealed to people's better judgment and their sense of fair play and honesty over the last 5 years.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Well,
good luck with that.
And they've had some success.
Really?
Oh, wow.
They've clawed back about 200 million or so of that money.
That surprises me.
But there is a huge, whopping £250 million at least still being handed out that shouldn't have been.
And presumably this hasn't stopped either. So the people who are wrongly in receipt of this on account of being dead will continue to be paid, presumably, until they turn off the taps.
Until they can get systems that are effective, work properly, and don't pay money to dead people.
I mean, surely if they do know that they're paying money to dead people, they can stop doing it.
One would like to think so.
You would think.
Well, there is a register of people that have died. I mean, but I guess...
No, but what I'm saying is if they've been able to supply Rupert Lowe with this information,
they now
must know who it is that they're paying in absentia,
and can stop.
as it were, and stop it.
But let's hope for the 10th anniversary of this show. We'll be able to see what they've done in the ensuing 5 years.
What you're now going to tell us, Pete, is the good news is the people that have been fired and prosecuted as a consequence of this farce are... How many people have been fired as a consequence?
I need another vodka.
I wonder how many of them have had their winter fuel allowance taken away as well, on the grounds that they're dead. Who can say? Rebecca, over to you. You're going to go with the railway lines, which is a very good old favourite of mine.
And it is a favourite of mine too. Now, I've heard some excuses in my time for trains being delayed and cancelled, leaves on the line, an egg sandwich that a train driver's eaten. But this one really, really is unique. Now, ASLEF, one of the unions, told their drivers that they shouldn't go to work because of snow. Now, this isn't snow on the tracks, this isn't a danger to the trains, isn't a danger to passenger safety.
No.
This is because of the pathways to the stations weren't gritted enough. But they were OK for passengers and pedestrians, just not the tootsies of our precious, really hard done by train drivers, who also, by the way, got 50% pay rise for on about 70 grand now, aren't they? So all these delayed trains. Now, what about the passengers, the commuters, the people who were stuck in snowy conditions at train stations? Not the safest thing for anyone. And they just allow that to happen.
The bizarre thing was, these train drivers had turned up for work. They were in their communal area, their office, their canteen.
Having a canteen, having a cup of tea in the morning.
So somehow they managed to negotiate.
Where, by the way, if anybody talks to them, the break time starts all over again, as we said last week.
Exactly. So it was the pathway from where they gather to the trains that had a whole 2 inches of snow on it. And as we know, 2 inches is only that much. Right?
I mean, to be honest, we haven't ever really had enough snow in this country to bring anything to a standstill, but it always does, doesn't it?
Trains, roads,
I mean, we've all lived
airports.
probably or been to countries where you get literally... I remember staying overnight in Ottawa, in Canada, and they had 8 feet of snow overnight.
And all the planes took off.
And even in Ottawa, they said, we'd really rather you didn't go out. But, of course, if you have to, we have cleared the roads. And they had cleared the roads, but 8 feet of snow. Can you imagine what happened here if
we
they
get
had
2 centimetres and everything stops?
I know. Shocking. So ASLEF, who have already now called more strikes this year than anybody else, are now also operating in a different way, because RMT have now caused more strikes, as they're now striking, I think, every Sunday between now and May on the Avanti train line. We mentioned this, I think, last week. Because they're not happy about having to work on their day off.
Well, and because they're not happy that managers get paid for coming in on their day off and get a bonus on top.
The managers get £600 a day
the train
for
drivers
working on a
get
Sunday.
Another 300 quid on top.
No, this is not the train drivers. This strike is the so-called train managers.
Oh, the managers.
Who are not
getting enough.
Who are not management. They're not getting enough. They only get 600 quid a day.
I'd just like to point out that if there's anybody who wants to pay me 600 quid to work on a Sunday, I'll work every Sunday.
Same
I mean, I think you'd work on your day off for 600 quid, wouldn't you? Let's have a look at some NHS instructions on what to do if you're a train driver walking in the snow. This was actually put out in Scotland.
Love this.
This was meant to be advice originally for older people to stop them from falling over on the ice.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Pop quiz. Walking slowly and with your feet going sideways doesn't stop you falling on the ice. Right? It doesn't actually stop you falling.
So this was a serious.
This was an NHS inspired video. Probably cost about 100 million.
I was going to say, how much did it cost?
Probably cost 100 million.
Together?
Because you know how much the NHS overpays for everything. But we should send it to ASLEF and get the drivers.
I don't want to be too distasteful, but they look like they've done something in their underwear.
They do, don't they? Yeah. It looks like they've come out of the local.
Then again, penguins walk like
having
that,
overpaid.
But they don't wear underwear.
Yeah.
Penguins don't wear underwear.
But back to the union point, though. Back to the union point. We were told, a bit like when Sadiq Khan took office, that there'd be no more strikes. Remember, there's been more strikes under Sadiq Khan in London than the previous 2 mayors. You would imagine that because the unions pay for Labour and the unions are in bed together, that now that Labour Labour formed the government over the last 6 months, as a consequence, there would be no more strikes over a bit of snow or a bit of money.
There's always more. No, there's always more strikes under Labour because they know they're going to get some more money.
Because they push, and the Labour government, as they have, give in.
Well, Louise Haigh had just given ASLEF a load of money, and they took the money, 15% increase, and then next week they went on strike again.
Yeah, and then she got sacked.
Because she's a convicted fraudster.
Yeah.
Which is not a great sort of CV, really, if you're going to be a Minister of the Crown. Will, over to you.
Well,
Elon Musk.
I'm really lucky. I know. I've got two. I've got the lovely Jess Phillips.
Yes.
Which I'll reserve my comments to a certain extent.
She's a great woman, according to Keir Starmer.
Fabulous woman, fabulous woman. And Ed Davey, the king of TikTok or TalkTik or whatever you want to call it, who really should stay to the clown show that he usually inhabits. But let's start with Jess Phillips. Obviously, the whole thing basically circles around the Elon Musk sort of interactions quite recently. And I think good for Elon Musk calling them out. And I love the fact there's a whole lot of other derivatives coming out of extraditing Americans. Yeah. I think they're forgetting about the First Amendment, which allows Americans to say things like that. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is he's called out, obviously, Jess Phillips. And rightly so, following from what you were saying, Russell. The fact is these rape gangs are not being subject to any kind of interrogation. No. They're not being scrutinised. And these inquiries, including the Oldham inquiry, who've asked for an inquiry, Jess Phillips turning it down. She is the safeguarding minister.
Yes.
Maybe she needs to work out and get a dictionary and figure out what safeguarding actually means, because she doesn't seem to be delivering. The whole point is Elon Musk rightly has called her out. And I think, and as you said, Mike, I think there's so much mounting pressure. This inquiry has to come through. The big question mark is, why are they hiding?
Yes.
Everything. Why are they trying to dodge this bullet
and
in going on this inquiry?
Why have those that... So you've got the criminality, which is a given in terms of those people. Some have been prosecuted, not enough, of course. But the big issue now, of course, is those that have covered this up for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
The council officers, the council leaders, the senior police officers, none of them have been brought to task whatsoever.
And you also know, here's another fact for you, that Jess Phillips, as the safeguarding minister, has never met any of the victims in any of the grooming gang scandals.
No.
She's never met one young
She
woman.
hasn't.
Well, and it also took her 4 months to reply to Oldham Council's letter.
Yeah, and the other point as well is Jess Phillips' most recent statement, as far as I understand, was to turn around and say, well, if the victims would like an inquiry, then we'll get one.
Right.
Well, I'm sure they would, but it would probably help if she asked them directly.
Or
listen to
it would
their
actually help
responses.
if she had a meeting with them. Let's see what she had to say, though, about being victimised herself by Elon Musk.
The things that he's saying are so ridiculous as to initially make me just go, what? It's not great. And the thing that annoys me the most about it is that it takes up so much bandwidth of my time from a man who knows absolutely nothing. I don't know what Elon Musk knows about it, but I don't know if it's happening on Mars.
And
that shows you, doesn't it show you how glib some of these politicians are?
Totally.
She's trying to make a joke about she's trying to make a joke about his exploration to Mars, which quite frankly would prove to me that her brain power would no longer match his any more than a hamster's would match mine. Yeah. At the end of the day, this guy explores space.
What's the old adage?
But I mean, also,
if she had enough brains to be explosives, she wouldn't be able to blow her own hat off.
Exactly.
I mean, if you look at some of Jess Phillips' tweets over the last few years, and you look at the number of expletives that she actually puts in these tweets referring to certain people, I mean, they would make sailors blush to a certain extent. Yeah. The thing that really irritates me about her is the fact that that I professionally look after people who are at risk or at threat or we've got death threats against them. And one of the first things that we always do is we try and de-escalate the sentiment that there may be against the individual.
Yes.
She's doing nothing to de-escalate the threat against her. So Keir Starmer coming out and saying, I won't tolerate threats being made against her. Well, take yourself out of the sight picture, because at the moment, she's keeping herself in the sight picture. Come out with something positive that the general public and the electorate want to hear in terms of these inquiries and progress it. But moving on to my second, Ed Davey.
Before we do that, let's have a look at Ed Davey's and Elon Musk's tweets, because this will set things up.
Love it.
Here it is. Elon Musk basically called him a snivelling cretin, which I think caused a huge round of applause in most of Britain, where everybody thought, well, actually, you've got him in one. Ed Davey, of course, also, I think, was telling Elon Musk that he had no business messing around with British politics. The thing that I love about all these MPs and political types in Britain saying you can't interfere with politics in another country, this is fresh off the back of all of them having to go at Donald Trump.
Exactly.
You know, getting involved in
sending 100 Labour supporters.
In the support of Kamala Harris. The Labour Party actually sending people over to work for the Democratic Party, and all the other interference that they do
Bill Gates
in countries like Ukraine and Russia and Iran and Israel. I mean, the idea that nobody's allowed to talk about any other country is complete madness.
It's ridiculous. But again, this is all part of Keir Starmer's sort of agenda, isn't it?
Right, it is.
But I think if we go to Davey himself, all he's doing is just trying to be relevant. Because, to be honest, other than these ridiculous TikTok videos that he comes out dancing around with various people, there is nothing of value that he brings whatsoever.
He talks about other people not getting involved in British politics. I mean, maybe as a politician on a big salary, he should actually start getting involved in British politics.
That might be a good idea.
Because all I ever see is him either on a roller coaster or falling off some paddleboard into the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely right. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, you might remember him, used to be the leader of the Labour Party.
Did he?
He's also been tweeting about Elon Musk. He says billionaires should not own media platforms. Billionaires shouldn't get involved in running the country. Billionaires shouldn't do this. Billionaires shouldn't do that. And at the bottom line of that, Elon Musk just went, yeah, they should.
Has Jeremy Corbyn got an allotment to attend to?
You would have thought so. I mean, he did at least get re-elected, even though he had to stand as an independent. Because even the Labour Party think he's too, extremist for them.
He's getting as nuts as his brother, isn't he, really?
Oh, well, God, don't get me started on him. Mark Zuckerberg has also been talking.
Oh, yes.
Because he, of course,
guidelines.
Has been running scared of the new Trump administration, which is coming in just a week or so, which is going to be very exciting. He suddenly decided to sack all of his fact-checkers and decided to actually make Facebook just like X, because he's copying Elon Musk. Have a look at this.
We're going to get rid of fact-checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. The fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
That video highlights one very important question.
Go on.
Is Zuckerberg's hair a perm or is it natural?
I don't think it's natural.
It's a perm. It's definitely a perm.
He's channeling Leo Sayer.
I was going to say, it's Leo Sayer or Kevin Keegan, isn't it? Very back to the 70s. But this is the guy that invented fact-checking. This is the guy that invented censorship on Facebook. I wonder why he suddenly changed his mind.
Do you think it's just a complete coincidence that a week before the inauguration of the next president, we know is kind of has been at odds with Mark Zuckerberg? Do you think it's a complete coincidence?
Well, do you know what?
Completely changed his approach?
This is where Trump and the Trump effect is already showing itself to be a positive for the rest of the world. Trump summoned him to Mar-a-Lago, and he went to see him. They sat down, had dinner. By the end of the dinner, Zuckerberg had promised to give him $1 million for his inauguration party, and he's also promised to get rid of all the fact-checkers. So
you can just imagine the first thing out of Trump's mouth was, how would you like Facebook to be shut down?
Yeah.
I'll change my stance.
I'll just change my stance. Absolutely incredible stuff. All right, coming up, we're going to have somebody from the royal family. Might not be who you think. We're going to be talking about Canada as well. Of course, Donald Trump thinks they should just annex that and make it the 51st state of America. And there's some more trouble at the police with Peter Bleksley. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to the 5th anniversary special for Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is Talk. We've got a great panel here. We've already got amazing suggestions already. I'm going to now do my first one, and it's unusually for the royal family. It's not Harry and Meghan. It's not even King Charles. It is Prince Andrew, right? Prince Andrew, who keeps trying to keep a low profile, but failing miserably to do so. Only last year we found out that he was supposed to be moving out of Frogmore Cottage or whatever it is, wherever he lives. The manor house that he lives in.
He's like the Mr. Bean of the royal family.
I think he sort of is the Mr. Bean of the royal family. Then we found out that he was hiding this sort of Chinese red under the bed, which wasn't a woman, by the way. It was this Chinese spy who seems to have got access to all sorts of politicians, thanks to Prince Andrew. He also set up not only various trips to China, but he also set up a sort of a web of companies, right, Companies House, because he's entitled to do that, even though he's a member of the royal family. I think they probably shouldn't be allowed to.
No.
You know, surely there should be some rule that says, look, if you're a member of the royal family, you can't just go setting up a load of kind of shell companies. But that's what he did. But worse than that, he set the companies up using a fake name.
No.
Right? Now, anybody who's here who has started up a company, and I'm sure we all have, you sort of know that that's basically illegal.
And how do you do it? I don't know how you're allowed to do it.
Well, he was able to do it on the grounds that he called himself Andrew Inverness. So it's not the greatest of fake names because nobody's called actually after a place in Scotland. I don't think there's anyone
It's
called...
not his middle name or anything.
No, he was given the title of the Duke of Inverness because apparently when you get married in the royal family, the Queen will bestow upon you a title. So, they, like, for example, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were given that title when they got married. So when he got married to Fergie back in the day, they were given the titles the Duke and Duchess of Inverness. So a bit like some of those, you know, toffs that you see in the House of Lords, Lord so-and-so, of somewhere or other. He thought it would be a great idea to call himself Andrew Inverness. And not only did he then sort of illegally make that his name on these company documents, he then filed the documents with a fake address as well. Right? Now, can you imagine if you and I had done
criminality.
this? It's criminality. I mean, the only reason this has been uncovered is because a person who I'm not very fond of, Graham Smith, who's the guy that runs Republic, who thinks that we shouldn't have a royal family, he uncovered it, and he's actually reported Prince Andrew to the police. Now, of course, not the first time that Prince Andrew's had some dealings with law enforcement.
He's got his own parking space.
Shall we say. Yeah. Lots of people would like to have him questioned over in the United States of America over certain you know, matters arising from his visits to New York and the Jeffrey Epstein apartment. But anyway, so he's been... I haven't seen much after this story broke earlier this week. I don't know whether the police are investigating. You may know better than me, Peter. Will the police investigate? But I mean, it is an offence to file company documents under a fake name.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Mike, and I know it's your show, but you've just said something that's fundamentally incorrect. There are lots of people named after places in Scotland. I've got a mate called Eddie Edinburgh. I've got a mate called Jerry Glasgow. Right, I've got Freddie Falkirk. Right,
these are your old informants.
Yeah.
And Harry Haggis.
Billy Bethnal Green.
Jimmy Forfar. We could go on all night with this. You know,
Freddie Fourfingers.
You know, Alice Linlithgow.
Colin Clerkenwell.
Yeah. It is. I mean, you may be
Scotland.
right. You know, I may be jumping the gun slightly. There may well be people named after Inverness, but I've never heard of anyone called, you know, Jimmy Inverness.
But is it illegal? It has to be.
Well, one of the things that I certainly know for a fact with Companies House is that, you know, if you are in a particularly sort of contentious or sort of potentially high-risk business, you can have your home address not actually included on your company's
Well, yeah, but people do this all the time.
Which is fine.
No, people do this all the time because you register your accountant, for example, as your registered address.
Or property directors. And so on.
But to actually using a fake name or a synonym, as far as I've known, you cannot do that. So I'd be interested to see what Companies House have to say.
Yeah, if you adopted a false name in order to gain some financial advantage, for example, that would most certainly be criminal.
Yes.
Likewise, if you adopted a false name because you wanted to disguise some obligation to pay money or taxes and such like. Once again, that would quite easily become criminal.
I should point out that he's not, in fact, an entrepreneurial genius, Prince Andrew. This might come as
I don't think he's a genius of any description.
No, he's really not.
So we're not really surprised, are we, that, Prince Andrew's popped up again with
doing
this
something
ridiculous...
stupid.
But also,
it's him again.
This is the man who said he couldn't sweat, when there is a whole history
Here's
of...
the pictures of me sweating.
Pictures of him sweating, the Pizza Express thing. He's so badly advised, and it's like he doesn't learn. I've said this quite a few times.
I suspect he just ignores the advice.
He has no humility in anything he's. I don't think he ever
He's the
realises.
ultimate elite. Who are the shareholders of these businesses? Well, eventually they might be.
Here's the thing, right? Yeah. He's got 4 companies apparently that are listed under this particular alias, right? 4 different companies registered to Companies House. One of them was a company called Ura Moore Limited, which has recently been shut down and dissolved. I mean, as you can imagine, he's not done terribly well. And then finally, here's a spokesman for the Metropolitan Police who says They confirmed they're looking into the report, but have not yet conducted an investigation. They say the report will now be assessed to determine whether any further action is required. There is no investigation at this stage. Well done, guys. Over to you. Justin Trudeau, let's go with Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah, talking about the elite. So Justin Trudeau, so the reason I think he's a plank, obviously he has resigned this week at long last. Now, this is a man that's, I guess, the equivalent of a Sadiq Khan in that he is a bit of a political cockroach.
He is.
That he's been elected 3 times in Canada, despite the fact that during COVID, the man was an absolute tyrant. So let me just remind you.
Wokest of the woke.
Wokest of the woke, but also a fascist, I'd have to say. The way he dealt with the truckers that protested.
Yes,
he froze their bank accounts.
He did.
And he also then set troops on protesters. He was a fascist. He was a tyrant. Now, somehow, despite that, the Canadian population of
He was like my favourite fascist from New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. And I'm only doing this so I can don't talk to your neighbours, because I haven't done it for a while. So I just thought I'd do that impersonation. Anyway, there you go.
So he's effectively jumped before being pushed, because he's been propped up apparently for the last few years in a coalition by another party that have just said, look, at long last, even though he has kept them in power effectively, they've had enough, and they've decided that they weren't going to support him any longer. He might stay in post, though, I hear, unfortunately, despite the fact he's resigned, until October. So they have to call an election now before October.
They're all falling like ninepins. Let's have a quick look, though, just at his resigning speech, because if you want a definition of a beta male, here it is.
Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement.
I mean,
hang on. Sorry, he talks about success. Any success I've had is because of what bloody success?
Yeah, I know.
But also, when it comes to the family, hasn't he split up with his missus? I mean, can you imagine him ringing his ex-wife and saying, what shall I do? She'll just go, I don't give a toss what you do.
Yeah. He's had a chance to speak to his family.
I know.
You know.
Can you imagine, rewind the clock 100 years or so, we're all about to go over the top. It's World War I. You know what I mean? So loads of rifles. Here we go, off into the abyss. Ready, steady. Where's Trudeau?
Yeah.
Trudeau!
He's talking to his family. Yeah. Listen, apparently we're running over, so Peter Bleksley, over to you with the Metropolitan Police.
Oh, the Metropolitan Police. My former employer. I need a drink.
They're never going to have you back, are they? They're never having you back.
No, they're not. They're
going, that guy Bleksley, he's always on telly having a go at us. And what's going on?
You were going to end up being commissioner. That's not going to happen, is it?
I don't think so. I mean, I've applied.
So Peter Bleksley's got a nice ring to it, though. You have to be a sir in order to run the Metropolitan Police. Can
you imagine the interview?
I think Lord Bleksley. That works.
So what have they done this week?
Oh, what haven't they done? Well, tragically, of course, another teenage life has been lost in South East London this week. They keep just shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. I've heard this week about how they're merely moving people around and renaming their jobs, all with an effort to try and look like they're doing something about neighbourhood policing. More to come on that story next week, I think. But at the moment, we know they have been getting themselves in a dreadful tangle over race for decades. But now, so much of their difficulties about race are internal. There's an organisation called the Black Police Association, which, when I went for lunch with the chair of that organisation many years ago, clearly a different chair from today, he said to me, Blex, do you know what? My ambition is that one day we can close this organisation because there'll be no need for it.
Is their office next to the White Police Officers Association?
It's in between the Muslim Police Association. I mean, there's an association for everything, right? There really is, including hamster ownership, I think. Oh, by the way, let me just tell you, I heard a story this week about a police officer, who is allowed to go home when the stresses of the job gets too much for that particular officer, because at home they've got a stress pet, which I kid you not, is a hamster.
Really?
So they're allowed to go home.
Well, I hope he doesn't do what people in Hollywood have been doing. Anyway, that's another story.
Can't make any Freddie stars.
We're right out of time here, so you've got about 30 seconds to tell us why you're nominating the Metropolitan Police.
Right, sorry. So at the moment, they've got a very messy internal discipline case going on. Chair of the Met Black Police Association on trial for discipline matters, which he denies, and the organisation and the Black Police Association are in conflict with one another, and they just seem to be eating themselves.
Right, and this guy's been accused of racism, hasn't he?
Text
perversely.
He has indeed.
It's really
sending
really
racist messages
in WhatsApp messages and groups and all that kind of game. And not so long ago, he actually complained about racism from white officers who stopped him when he was driving home. It's such a mess.
Yeah.
Can somebody with a spine get a grip of the Metropolitan Police, get it out of special measures and make it fit for purpose?
But Pete, you
That's
need to
all I
understand
ask.
racism only goes one way.
Yeah. I find myself wanting to say, why don't you just go out and arrest some real criminals, as opposed to all this rubbish. Anyway, coming up, Rebecca's going to be talking to us about one of the banks. Will's got the NHS for us. And we're nearly at the final furlong, where I get to choose who will win this week's final 5th anniversary Plank of the Week. Welcome back to a very special Plank of the Week. This is the 5th anniversary of Plank of the Week, so thank you to all of you as well for watching, for building the audience over the time that we've done so. We're very proud of it. Russell Quirk is here as the sole representative of the guest list at the time. We used to only be able to afford 2 guests. Now we can afford 4. Absolutely brilliant. Rebecca, over to you. You've got a bank for us.
I have, and I love it when banks try and be woke and PC,
Oh,
because
God.
all they really need to do is invest money, make some money, and invest our own money so we can get some more back.
And try not to steal money from the people that have actually put the money in the bank.
That would be good too.
Yeah.
But being woke, obviously, and PC is so important on the agenda. So someone at Barclays thought, I know what we'll do. We need to check our branches are, friendly and helpful to people with all sort of, able-bodied and disabled people. So they employed an agency to basically do a mystery shopper experience. And the advert was, if you don't, you can have, a visual impairment, any sort of disability, and if you don't have one, you can just pretend to have one, and then you can, act it up to see how staff treat you. It's
Sorry,
really
that's their
happened.
official...
So you go in like the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Really happened.
Go in with your dog and a pair of sunglasses.
a
Just to
white
pretend.
stick, whatever kind of, ludicrous idea they had. And then they would fill out a questionnaire afterwards saying how the staff reacted. Now, first...
I'd apply for that job.
Well, it's 45 quid.
I'd say I'll pretend to be a Labour politician.
Would you do it on your day off, though?
No, I don't think
you're at
that's...
600 quid.
600 quid.
600 quid he would.
Well, it was only £45, but obviously a lot of charities have spoken up, particularly a blind charity, saying you could have just asked us.
Yeah.
We could have. You could have shared your experience. They could have, sent people who actually have a disability. The irony in this, though, is that most banks, Barclays closed, I think, over 200 in the last, year and a half or so of their branches. So how about investing some of that money into making online banking or telephone banking easier for different people, for all people?
Well, they might actually pick up the phone in the call centre, you mean?
Oh, and actually help you.
That would be nice.
And also don't this idea
So
of
they've actually encouraged people to pretend to be blind.
This is what this agency who Barclays
That's ridiculous,
hired.
isn't it?
Yeah.
But
What about if you pretend to be deaf? Sorry? I don't know.
But
I have
actually,
no
it's
idea.
often the other way around. It's the banks that are blind and deaf in terms of... Did you see this week? There was someone on social media saying, I went into my bank and said, I want to withdraw 20 grand. And they said, what do you want it for?
And they,
what do you want it for?
They wouldn't
and he
give
said,
it.
none of your business. They said, you can't have it then. He went, it's my bloody money.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Money. They wouldn't let
I had a bit of this, right? I moved some money from one ISA to another ISA, and I had to go to this place that I'd never heard of before, and it seems a perfectly reputable bank. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I got an email from them, right, about a month after I'd opened the ISA, to say, good news, we've planted a tree in your name. I'm like, what? What do you mean you plant a tree in my name? Why? Why? I don't want you to plant a bloody tree in my name. Can I go and see the tree? Where is the tree? They
Can I
wouldn't tell
name
me.
it?
Is it a money tree?
It's not a money tree,
Very good.
unfortunately.
Very good.
I don't know where it is. I hope it's not in Sri Lanka because, Chris Martin did that. He planted a load of trees and they all burned to
But knowing you were
too hot.
knowing you were determined to find it so you could go and chop it down.
I would like to chop it down and put it on the wood burning stove, because you might need to season the wood for a couple of years. I'm up for that. But I see no benefit to myself for having a tree planted in my
Did you
bloody
reply?
name. I did.
Yeah,
I said, why have you planted a tree in my name? I didn't ask you to. All I want you to do is to pay me the 5% or whatever it is, and then next year I'm going to move it to another place.
Yeah.
Where presumably they'll plant another tree.
Yeah.
I mean, if we keep going like this, we'll have an entire forest in my name.
be nothing left on the planet.
By the
Just
turn of
trees.
the next. It's just ridiculous, though, isn't it? But I'm amazed that this is not in some way actionable by disability groups who could say, well, you're just making fun of us now, aren't you? Just pretending that you can have the disabled experience by telling everyone you're blind.
Deeply insulting.
It's trying to catch staff out as well. I understand why mystery shoppers exist and staff need to be held account, but at the end of the day, what about the guys with the massive, or women as well, with the massive bonuses at the top of the chain? No, you're going to attack someone who's quite probably going to lose their job in a branch anyway. For what?
I know.
I'm sure they're not like this anyway.
Ridiculous.
But was there any evidence at all that bank employees weren't dealing properly and correctly with people that have got...
Well, probably, because they've been useless for years. Well, they've been useless for years.
I think they just treat everybody badly.
Everybody's
it's not just the deaf and the blind.
Of course.
It's everyone.
True.
Yeah, exactly right. Will, over to you. The NHS, this is good.
Ooh, yes, this is a very contentious one, especially as I think we all probably know someone who has been on a waiting list with the NHS for some probably critical care and have been pushed back time and time again. Well, it's come to light that there is this thing called the 987 Health Inclusion.
987?
987. Why it's 987, don't ask me, Mike. I don't know. But
it sounds like some kind of secret combination number.
I think it might be, but not
like
to a Swiss bank account.
Like a message to the migrants or something. 987.
But basically what it is, it's an exemption for illegal immigrants.
Right.
Now, it does include homeless people and drug addicts, which I think
What about people pretending to be disabled? Anything for them?
I don't think they're covered. I don't think they're covered. But if you are an illegal immigrant, you can jump the waiting queue.
Oh, great.
To basically get any kind of NHS care.
Brilliant.
Which please, guys, maybe you can give me some logic behind this, why this would be provided.
This would be the same logic. This would be the same logic that people used to say in Transport for London that they want to give illegal migrants free travel in London.
Oh, I didn't even hear that.
In order for them to get to interviews, to get to things they need to do, to get to appointments perhaps with the NHS, which they've jumped the queue for.
They obviously can now.
You know, because it's difficult for them to pay. Well, what about it's difficult for everybody to bloody well pay?
Yeah.
You know, we should not be subsidising it.
Yeah, and we used to have free tubes on New Year's Eve once upon a time for a certain city.
But the same logic that dictates if you're an asylum seeker, you get free dentistry. But if you're a member of the British taxpaying public, you don't.
No,
but
absolutely.
If you're an Albanian who's come to the UK illegally and you're looking to set yourself up as a self-respecting drug dealer, then isn't it reasonable that they can use the buses and tubes for free?
Yeah.
Or else how else are they going to distribute?
They're normally driving around in a BMW, aren't they?
Yeah.
They don't really use the public transport system because it's,
But it's this,
full of cocaine.
this phenomenal process that basically anybody can walk in through the door. So it's almost, I would say to anybody who wants to get critical care, pretend you're an illegal immigrant because you'll probably get it.
I was just trying to do the calculation in my head, actually. So on the basis that if you're a member of the British public, you could probably get the Eurostar to Calais, come back across the channel in
throw your passport out the
go
window.
to the NHS and get seen quicker than if you'd gone to A&E in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it.
We've learned only this week that people are going to A&E and waiting 50 hours. So over 2 days to actually be seen by a doctor. I wonder if that's because you're behind about 50 guys from the boats that have just come in.
Who have no documentation, no paperwork.
Who've got their own kind of fast-track lane, presumably.
But sorry, just to sort of stir it slightly, I don't want to see people collapsing on the street, not having, we're not a third world country and it shouldn't be happening anywhere in the world.
Rebecca, we are getting there.
We are, but
trying hard.
I agree with you, but I don't want to see someone collapse in the street and being in a country where we're like, well, you're not British taxpayers, so we're not going to save you.
No, but that's not what this is about. Because if you do collapse on the street, you will be picked up and you will be taken out.
But what would I think might be a solution is if you're an illegal immigrant and you want to access some of our services, why don't you work for the NHS? I'm sure there's plenty of jobs open for porters.
All right, listen, now we've got to stop. We've got to stop because otherwise I'm going to get into several trouble. We're out of time. The 5th anniversary show is the same length as every other show, so we have to stop.
Damn it.
Coming up, the final nail in the coffin, Plank of the Week. It's going to be the last time this guy gets nominated, I'm pretty sure. Coming next. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. And it is, of course, as I said, the 5th anniversary of Plank of the Week. Russell Quirk was here 5 years ago in this very studio. We didn't have all of the razzmatazz that you have now. It had a blue curtain. We had a couple of, easy chairs.
It was just 2 chairs.
2 chairs. I was sitting in the middle, and a little table, I think, in front of us. I think he looks better now. People said this to me the other day. I met somebody I hadn't seen for a while. He said, look, 10 years younger.
Yeah. Well, people say, I'm the kind of Benjamin Button in this scenario.
Yes.
I think that I'm actually getting younger and younger as I get older.
Yeah.
Work that out.
It's good. Yeah. It's brilliant. Speaking of somebody who's not getting younger as he gets older,
Peter Bleksley.
We're going to give you the man who probably personifies everything that was wrong with the last 4 years of the world, right? And it is, of course, the one and only President Joe Biden. Have a look at this.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. All right.
I love how personal that was.
So he's like, so personal. So he's like, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. I mean, we've all kind of been in places where you forget somebody's name.
Joe Biden is the worst ventriloquist I've ever seen.
I mean, this guy has been useless, right? We now know, because I think it was the New York Post that told us about 2 weeks ago, before Christmas, that in fact, forget about the fact that he's been deteriorating, in office. He was as crazy as he is now at the beginning.
When he first got elected.
When he first got elected.
Yeah.
He was suffering from cognitive problems even then.
Yeah.
And in fact, the entire 4 years of his tenure have been punctuated by him falling off bikes, falling down flat on his face,
not being able to get off the stage,
tripping up the stairs on an aeroplane, Air Force One,
twice,
not being able to get off the stage, not remembering what
calling
his name
Zelensky
was.
Vladimir Putin.
I mean, the list goes on and on. And I just thought, that's a very minor sort of mishap for him there. But I just thought, because this time next week, it'll be the last week ever of the Joe Biden presidency.
So we're sending him off with a fond farewell.
We're sort of sending him off with a fond farewell. I mean, he's not good enough, I'm afraid, to win Plank of the Week.
But the way he speaks is almost like he was taught by the same master of ceremonies as Keir Starmer.
Yes.
The whole 5, 4...
Well, at least, I mean, Starmer, of course, doesn't just mumble his words, he just completely mixes them up.
Well, he only speaks with his nose, I think, doesn't he?
Sausages for hostages.
Right. Yeah, release the sausage.
Because it has the same number of syllables. I mean, you can't really explain it.
Well, it's okay.
But I mean, Biden, for me, I don't know about you guys, but I have a couple of my favourite moments of Joe Biden. One was definitely the one where he just was literally at the awards ceremony at the Naval Depot, and he just fell straight down flat on his face as he was walking away from the podium. And the other one, I think, was the bike. When he was cycling on the bike and he sort of came to a complete stop before he just fell off.
And didn't put his feet down.
And he just went like that. He's sort of off to the side. Unbelievable. Really hard to believe.
Well, and the people behind the scenes, including his wife, Jill Biden, that enabled him to carry on despite all knowing what was wrong with him.
Just incredible.
Outrageous.
Incredible. Anyway, so farewell, Joe Biden. We shall miss you. But not as the leader of the free world. We'll miss him on the comedy value.
For the comedy value, maybe.
Yeah. But Donald Trump is going to be a great president. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Now, I can't see past one winner here today. I think you're going to know who it is. It's got to be Keir Starmer, isn't it?
I mean,
Keir Starmer, for not wanting not only to have an inquiry into the most horrific scandal that the British public have ever seen, I think, within recent memory.
Yep.
And worse than that, calling everybody who wants to have an inquiry far right.
Far right.
Oh, God.
And absolutely, upsetting the entire nation. And with every week that passes, I think to myself, he can't surely screw this up any more than he has. But he keeps doing it.
He can't even go on holiday without screwing his holiday up, can he?
I mean, he goes tobogganing in Madeira.
Yes.
And then gets booed by the public. Brilliant. I mean, incredible, isn't it? So I'm afraid, once again, for the 5th anniversary plank of the week, it is Sir Keith Starlin. Sorry. Sir Keir Starlin. Sorry. 2-tier, free gear, never here, wish you weren't here.
Farmer
Harmer, Starmer. Plank of the week. Thank you very much to Russell. Thank you very much to Peter. Thank you very much to Rebecca. Thank you very much to Will. Great to see you all. We'll be back with more from Plank of the Week, same time next week.
Can I have some cake now?
No.